Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Kenji Mizoguchi's Utamaro and His Five Women in 1946. Here's the set, the Blu-ray set of course, and yes, my first Mizoguchi review, of course. Last year, it was around about January where I started watching Mizoguchi films, just after I'd kind of started going through Ozu works, and yes, of course, alongside some of these films in this set, for example, I started watching Late Spring and all this kind of stuff, so yes, very interesting because I kind of had, I didn't like to compare them too much, but they often are, of course, compared, as well as Kurosawa, and less so, but definitely so as well. Kobayashi, you've got other ones, Naruse and stuff, but yes, the three sort of most popular, you could say, Japanese directors, Kurosawa, Mizoguchi and Ozu, and yes, basically, when I was watching the Ozu and Mizoguchi films, of course I watched more Ozu films, but really, there was no comparison for me, although I do think Mizoguchi was very impressive overall. And these films, of course, I watched all four of them, last year. And yeah, basically, of course, I do, put my ratings in my book that I have and stuff, my journal. I didn't review them, on YouTube, but yes, I thought a mixture between good, very good, and one masterpiece, which of course is included in this set, and that is Story of the Last Chrysanthemums. That is an absolute exceptional piece of cinema that really was leagues above the rest of them. Of course, I also watched, and this is a Criterion edition, The Life of Ôhara. It's praised as one of the best, Mizoguchi films and films of the 50s as well. I didn't think it was great, but I do think it's very good, very impressive, and of course, Kinuyo Tanaka. She was a great actress, and yes, she's also in this film, and basically 1946 is the first film actually that was under kind of influenced by American influence basically of Mizoguchi's work, and yes, basically 18th century fictionalized kind of portrait of this kind of printmaker's life. So yes, it explored paintings and everything, and just really art in general. A very, very short film, but yes, it's kind of course, the five women as well are involved in the film, and of course, yeah, it's kind of Mizoguchi was kind of a feminist director, especially not really any more perfect examples than this film here. Across the films that I've seen, very, very feminist. So that's great, of course, to see these films. And yes, basically, this film, Utamaro is this painter, this printmaker. And basically, explores his kind of his life over the film, and kind of, it's not massive in scope, but it is, yes, it's very, very focused on this this main guy Utamaro. But of course, there are side characters in the film, and yes, it's hard to explain the rest of the plot. Just watch it and find out what you think. But yes, this is not really comparable to kind of Ozu works, especially not Kurosawa works. Of course, Kurosawa is not really. His style is not really Japanese compared to all the other directors, really, because it's more Western influenced. It's kind of more like John Ford and stuff. So it's not really. I don't really see sometimes how people compare them, but the style. But of course, for the record, I do prefer Ozu to both of these guys. I think Ozu is the greatest Japanese director, and yes, Kurosawa I also love. Mostly, and this Mizoguchi. This film. It's very good, bordering on good. I think it has a lot of flaws, but it is very impressive at moments, certainly. And it's basically to review this film. It's hard to kind of. I'm not going to get into more of the plot, but yes, this film, of course, talk about the style. The Story of the Last Chrysanthemums was a bit different to this in terms of the style, but yes, basically Mizoguchi, and certainly I've heard, with Sancho the Bailiff and Ugetsu, of course, which I'm massively hyped for. I've actually pre-ordered another kind of one that's now out. It's coming out soon, Criterion. So I can't wait for that. And yes, I'm going to be watching that, of course, in March. And yes, basically, his later films, the 50s films, meant to have more of a kind of a tuned style. I think basically even more stripped down, you could say, and more kind of less takes. Kind of one scene, one take. I've heard. So yes, it'll be interesting. Whether or not I like that more, we'll have to find out. But this one, of course, to compare it to Ozu, it's not as much close-ups. There's not as much kind of rule-breaking, you could say. And it's not really, for me, as connected with the characters. And I do think it's definitely flawed. For me, personally, the way it kind of approaches, the way he shoots this film, and actually quite a lot of the other ones as well. Didn't really find that in Chrysanthemums, but again that's because I was more focused on the characters and the kind of heartbreaking stuff that went on, because that was devastating film, but again one that I connected to really on every level. I think the characters in a lot of these other ones, in this set and Life of Ôhara, are not that, they're not great characters for me. I think the script, is very good overall, but really the characters aren't great. They are just kind of a mixture between fine and actually Utamaro was very good. And it's more about how it kind of explores the nature of art and just I think how the film flows and stuff, which is very nice. But really, the characters aren't great, and because of this, because there's not loads of stuff that's ultra compelling, you could say, like Ozu films for sure. Really, all of them, apart from maybe two that aren't that compelling. I think it suffers. I think this film has got some issues. I think it brings it down for me great because the way this film is shot, in terms of the exterior shots, and actually just how beautiful it is to look at, and kind of just definitely some of the framing. It is immaculate. It's stunning. But it's just the way the characters relate to this, and the way he kind of engages me, in this through the visuals, in relation to the characters is sometimes a bit detached for me. I think it's not kind of completely in tune as one really with the whole film and the characters like Ozu films really are. All of the films that I've seen actually from Ozu are. I think this one, I was wowed. I was really taken aback by some of the exterior shots and stuff. And actually, I think he knew how to kind of compose the shots more, even with the characters in them senses. But really, there are scenes that for me are a bit flat as well. But yeah, I think it has a lot of charm. This film, it has great moments of cinematography, of course, and overall, the visuals are definitely very good. There's no denying that. The music use, when it is there, is very good, and actually the acting across the board is very, very solid. At least Utamaro was brilliant, and actually a couple of the other actors, actresses, very, very good. And yes, basically, it's a very, very intriguing film in the way that kind of what it says about art, and actually just the desperation and the obsession. That's what I really loved about the film, actually. In touches, I think I don't love the film overall, but there's actually some stuff that does really, really amazingly well, and that's kind of exploring, the nature of art, the kind of the way it kind of relates to kind of as well. Oppression, is in the film, and of course things happen in the film to Utamaro and various other characters. Yes, so basically it's about trying to breaking free from things as well, and how it affects one's life, really, art, and it's really, really interesting. In that sense, it was very engaging in that sense, and I think, although there's not great characters, I think the themes that he explored, just through the film, actually were very, very impressive, and at times great. I really do. I think, there is a couple moments I think early on as well where it's not that engaging, as far as kind of what it should have been really. But yes, the film does pick up after the 30-minute mark, and the rest of the film is consistently, good, very good, and at times a couple of flourishes, in many things, a couple of things like the themes, as I said, that are quite great, you could say. And yes, I think that this is not a great film. It's not a masterpiece for me, but it is, and it's very, very close to being just a good film. But really, the ending as well, I really, really liked. So yes, I think it bumped itself up, after the first 30 minutes. And actually, I was thinking, I gave this quite, I did give this an 80% last time, so I was thinking, in the first half an hour, I was thinking maybe it's too high, but then of course I realised why I did, because of course the rest of the film is much better. It was just a bit kind of flat at first. It was kind of high average / good, and just there wasn't loads of things going on with the narrative, and it was a bit jumbled. But yes, the film, it does achieve quite a few things very, very well. The themes, of course, the Mizoguchi explores, really, really great. I think some of the performances are very, very good. It does have some comedy in there, and that's it's effective in the film. And I think it's a very, very kind of eventually a very interesting kind of piece about humanity and art, you know, the way they coincide, and of course as well, there's some moments, you know, that are a bit odd, but you know, I think they are kind of quite powerful as well, you know, and stuff, and you know, the whole kind of way that he kind of does the paintings and everything, it's just very, very interesting. The way he goes, Mizoguchi goes about kind of bringing this to us, and yeah, I think over the visual storytelling, while flawed, definitely has moments of greatness. The outside shots, you know, the exterior shots, that's really getting me excited for kind of Sancho the Bailiff and Ugetsu, because I know that them films, of course, are more outside and kind of among nature and you know, more feudal than these. And yes, I think you know, them films look really great. If of course, if it's you know, comparable to the Story of the Lost Chrysanthemums, you know, I think Mizoguchi will rise in my estimations. You know, I think Ugetsu looks like it could be, you know, a stunning film. I've heard so much about it, and there is two most acclaimed films. This one is not really, you know, as acclaimed as the others. It's you know, it's kind of, you could say maybe middling in terms of the acclaim of his films. But yes, this film, I would definitely recommend it. You know, it says a lot about art and humanity. It is a human film, but there is some flat moments for me. You know, cinematography, it's definitely not flawless for me. I think the style, definitely, it does hinder things at times, but other times it elevates, you know, especially, you know, the outside shots. There's kind of like a dreamlike effect that it has in the visuals. I really loved the use of focus in the film outside, the lighting, and just the overall kind of dreamy feel that it had. You know, really, really stunning, I think. And of course, you know, Chrysanthemums, that film was masterfully shot. Yes, just some of these other ones. There's some problems with the style that I have personally. Yeah, I prefer it to be different, but you know, I think I don't quite connect it to the way he kind of, yeah, as I've said, frames some people, and kind of, it does feel a bit too detached for me. This is not Ozu, it's not kind of perfectly framed, and in the way that you can kind of still get invested as well in the characters and everything, but that's a different story, because Ozu films, you know, they're kind of, for me, and I have a lot of people watching this, of course, have probably seen Ozu films, if they've seen Mizoguchi films, and yes, you know, Ozu kind of, it's almost flawless really in developing characters, so that's kind of different, because you're always kind of, at least a couple of the characters in his films, in all of the ones I've seen, you know, are very, very compelling, and even if it was in this style, which is a bit too detached for me, I think I'll be more invested in the film. But of course, Ozu also shot his films really perfectly, so there's that case, you know, the fact that everything comes together, and as I say, slightly in this film, it's a bit off in the connection that it has, you know, with the characters, you know, visual storytelling, and as well, just a couple of moments that, you know, don't really go too many places, and you know, could have easily been taken out of the film. There's not really any off-tone moments, but there is a couple of moments that seem a bit odd, you know, and maybe don't quite come off well. But yes, I think overall, a very good film that is close to being good. You know, I think it's a very, very low, very good score, but it is nevertheless, because as well, the final act really, it came together as well. And yes, basically, recommend it, and I give it an 80%. I think that's a fair score from me. I did enjoy it. Didn't love the film, you know, and even though I've rewatched it now, I still don't love the film. I think it's definitely very flawed at times, and it's a narrative that's not great overall, because of what it kind of explores at times throughout the film. And the overall, you know, some of the main performances, you know, are very, very good and stuff. And of course, the visuals, you know, at times are striking, all this kind of stuff. It is very good. You know, I had to give it an 80. I think that's a fair score. A bit less for my enjoyment, if I had to be honest. But yeah, I liked it. I think it was impressive. Not a great film, and not, you know, I wouldn't say it would ever be worthy of, you know, being called one of the best films ever made. Not too much. People would say that though. You know, I think more his best films are known to be, you know, Sancho the Bailiff, Ugetsu, and of course, you know, Story of the Lost Chrysanthemums, stuff like that. This film, you know, is kind of, it's a recommendable film, and it does some very interesting stuff, and it's well made overall, very well made. But yes, I have some issues, and I don't think it's great, but I would recommend it. So yes, of course, very much looking forward to the rest of the Mizoguchi reviews. They'll come over time. Of course, when I get to, that'll be watched in March for sure. And yes, thanks for watching my review.